Hi again. John Urquhart, The Wonders of Prophecy, written about 120 years ago. He's talking about Egypt in chapter 5, and this is on page 54. He deals with the remaining industries and how in Isaiah 19 they are dealt with and foredoomed by prophecy. The remaining industries of Egypt were also to suffer. The prophet continues, Moreover, they that work in combed flax, they that weave white cloth shall be ashamed, and her pillars shall be broken in pieces, and all that work for hire shall be grieved in soul. Neither shall there be for Egypt any work which head or tail, palm branch or rush may do. That's Isaiah 19, verses 9, 10, and 15. The pillars are the support of the social fabric, the rich and noble by whose patronage the industries of the country were encouraged. Head and tail are expressive figures of those who lead and those who follow, as are the lofty palm branch and the humble rush of high and low, the aristocracy and the masses of the people. It is implied that these are bound together in a fellowship of labor, and we are told that a day was to come when their occupation should be gone and the fellowship should cease. That the hand is laid here upon what formed a special feature of Egyptian life we shall now and immediately see. But to understand how heavy this doom was and the improbability of its fulfillment, we have to recall the fact that the greatness of Egypt lay not so much in her military power as in her civilization. Her arts and her industries were her chief glories. Before showing that their luster is undimmed by modern achievements, I may say that they were well and long sustained by the pillars. Considerable sums were expended in furnishing houses and in many artificial caprices, which rich jewels and costly works of art were in great request, as well among the inhabitants of the provincial capitals as at Thebes and Memphis. They delighted in splendid equipage, elegant and commodious boats, numerous attendants, horses, dogs, and other requisites for the chase. And besides, their houses, their villas, and their gardens were laid out with no ordinary expense. That's according to Wilkinson in his two-volume set, The Ancient Egyptians. The rich frequently had ornamental works, statues, and furniture of solid gold. Expense was lavished upon them even in the tomb. The embalming of a corpse sometimes cost, according to Diodorus Siculus, 250 pounds sterling, which is thousands of dollars today, of course. The palm branch and the rush, the higher and the lower classes alike, shared in the vast and continuous labors which were characteristic of Egyptian civilization, has been abundantly proved by the monuments. The priests, who were bound by an exacting ritual, held the first position in the state. They were also charged with the administration of the law. The chief architects were princes and were permitted to intermarry with the royal family. The military force, consisting of 410,000 men, exclusive of the large force of mercenaries, and the commands were held by the nobility. These last occupied posts also in the royal household, in the government of the country, in the management of the royal estates, and notwithstanding that a shepherd was an abomination to the Egyptians, even the office of superintendent of the herds was filled by men of rank. This union of classes is an indication of the place which art and industry held in the public estimation. Excellence was their constant aim, we may say their passion, and the utmost care was taken to secure the highest efficiency in every department. No tradesman, says Diodorus, was permitted to meddle in political affairs or to hold any civil office in the state, lest his thoughts should be distracted by the inconsistency of his pursuits. They feared that without such a law their proper occupations would be neglected. They also considered that to follow more than one occupation would be detrimental to their own interests and to those of the community, and that when men, from a motive of avarice, are induced to engage in numerous branches of art, the result generally is that they are unable to excel in any. The results of this care have secured for Egypt its undying fame. The byssus woven in the looms of those who worked in combed flax was sold for its weight in gold, and Pliny, accounting for the large quantity of flax cultivated in Egypt, explains that the Egyptians exported linen to Arabia and India, and adds that the quality of that produced by Egyptian looms was far superior to any other. Nor was the praise bestowed upon that manufacture unmerited, and the quality of one piece of linen found near Memphis fully justifies it, and excites equal admiration at the present day, being to the touch comparable to silk, and not inferior in texture to our finest cambric. Some idea may be given of its texture from the number of threads to the inch, which is 540, that is 270 double threads in the warp, and 110 in the woof. It is covered with small figures and hieroglyphics so finely drawn that here and there the lines are with difficulty followed by the eye. The perfection of its threads is equally surprising. The knots and breaks seen in our best cambric are not found in holding it to the light. And this is all apparently a quote from Pliny, about 2,000 years ago. Their superiority was as marked in spinning as in weaving. The threads employed, for example, in the manufacture of nets astonished the ancients by their fineness and strength. Some of the nets, Pliny says, quote, were so delicate that they would pass through a man's ring, and a single person could carry a sufficient number of them to surround a whole wood. Julius Lupus, who died while governor of Egypt, had some of these nets, each string of which consisted of 150 threads, a fact perfectly surprising to those who are not aware that the Rhodians preserve to this day in the temple of Minerva a linen corselet presented to them by Amasis, king of Egypt, whose threads are composed each of 365 fibers. Herodotus mentions another presented by the same king to the Lacedaemonians. It was of linen, he says, ornamented with numerous figures of animals worked in gold and cotton. Each thread of the corselet was worthy of admiration, for though very fine, every one was composed of 360 other threads, all distinct. That's all Herodotus. Now Urquhart says the combing of the flax was a marked feature in the manufacture. The cloth was subjected to a process of smoothing or calendering. They also anticipated the moderns in the use of dyes. Another very remarkable discovery of the Egyptians was the use of mordants. They were acquainted with the effect of acids on color, and submitted the cloth they dyed to one of the same processes adopted in our modern manufactories. And while, from his account, we perceive how little Pliny understood the process he was describing, he at the same time gives us the strongest evidence of its truth. In Egypt, he says, they stain clothes in a wonderful manner. They take them in their original state, quite white, and imbue them, not with a dye, but with certain drugs which have the power of absorbing and taking color. When this is done, there is still no appearance of change in the cloths, but so soon as they are dipped into a bath of the pigment, which has been prepared for the purpose, they are taken out properly colored. The singular thing is that though the bath contains only one color, several hues are imparted to the piece, nor can the color be afterward washed off. End of the quote from Pliny. Urquhart says this is not the only indication presented by their manufacturers that they were acquainted with the secrets of modern science. That the Egyptians possessed considerable knowledge of chemistry and the use of metallic oxides is evident from the nature of the colors applied to their glass and porcelain. Glass cutting was supposed to have been first invented in the 17th century by laymen at Prague, but the specimens of ancient glass, cut, engraved, and ground, discovered in Egypt, suffice to prove, it was practiced there of old. Emery powder and the lapidary's wheel were also used in Egypt. Goes on about the manufacture of glass next time. I'll put in a link this time to a video we did in our Genesis series on Abraham, who is known, of course, to us as the father of the faithful, but he failed his very first test after picking up the public worship, establishing the public worship by building an altar to Yahweh in Canaan. Abraham, called the father of the faithful, but falls immediately and when he goes down to Egypt. And I'll put in a link to the Genesis playlist as well. See you soon.